Praise to God, immortal praise. Praise to God, immortal praise, for the love that crowns our days, bounteous source of every joy. Let thy praise our tongues employ. For the blessings of the field, for the stores and gardens yield, for the joy which harvest brings, grateful praises now we sing. Clouds that drop refreshing dews, suns that genial heat diffuse, flocks that whiten all the plain, yellow sheaves of bright and grain. All that spring with bounteous hand scatters o'er the smiling land. All that liberal autumn pours from her overflowing stores. These great God, to thee we owe, source whence all our blessings flow, and o'er these our soul shall raise grateful vows and solemn praise. Good evening, friends and family. Thank you for coming out tonight. Welcome to the 2023 City Light School Program. Your interest and presence here this evening is very meaningful to us, especially to the students and the teachers. And first of all, I would like to say, on behalf of the school board and the parents, to our teachers, thank you very much, Miss Susanna, Mrs. Mills, and Miss Gwen, for all the blood, sweat, and tears you put into this year. Many hours of labor, the many sacrifices in helping the education of our young people. It does not go unnoticed, so we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Our school programs here are meant to be a time for the students to exhibit the knowledge and skills that they attained in this year of learning, and also in preparation and performance here tonight to build teamwork, working together, and also to hone their public speaking skills. So this evening you're going to witness a diverse program that will include music, scripture recitation, and skits, and a few educational reports. Also want to mention our school collaborates with a few homeschool families, mostly in the music classes, and so they will be joining us also on stage for the singing. And along with that, I want to thank Jennifer for her help in teaching music and for helping this program, getting it together. So I personally can attest to all the work that went into this, so you can show your appreciation, but I do ask you hold your applause till the end, and then we'll give time for that. Thank you.
1 Corinthians 13. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. And love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails, but whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. For now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. Now abideth faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Spring. Toad, wake up. It is spring now. Blah. Toad, wake up. The sun is shining. The snow is melting. Wake up. I am not here. Toad, where are you? Go away. Oh, there you are. Help! I cannot see anything. Don't be silly. I'm not. All you see is the light of April. We will be getting a whole new year together. We will run through the woods. We will sit here on the porch and count the stars. You may count the frog. I will be too tired. I am going back to bed. But Toad, you miss all the fun. Listen, Frog, how long have I been asleep? You have been asleep since November. Well then, a little more sleep will not hurt me. Come again and wake me up at about past May. Good night, Frog. But Toad, I'll be lonely until then. December. January, February, March, April. Toad, wake up. It is May now. What? Can it be May so soon? Well, yes. We'll look at your calendar. Why, it is May.
Toad had many things to do, so he wrote on a piece of paper.
A list of things to do today.
He crossed out,
Wake up, eat breakfast, get dressed.
the next thing on his list was
Go to Frog's house. Go to Frog's house.
Hello.
Look at my list of things to do.
Oh, that is very nice.
My list tells me that we will go for a walk.
Oh, right. I am ready.
Take walk with Frog. Help! My list is blown away. What will I do without it?
Hurry, running, catch it.
No, I cannot do that.
Why not?
Because running after my list is not one of the things that I wrote on my list of things to do.
Frog ran after the list. He ran over hills and swamps, but the list flew on and on. At last, Frog came back to Toad.
I'm sorry, but I did not catch your list.
Blah! I cannot remember any of the things that I wrote on my list of things to do. I would just have to sit here and do nothing.
Toad, it's getting dark. We should go to sleep now.
Go to sleep? That was the last thing on my list.
Toad wrote on the ground with a stick.
Go to sleep. Go to sleep. There. Now my day is all crossed out.
I am glad. Christmas Eve.
On Christmas Eve, Toad cooked a big dinner.
Frog is late.
Toad looked at his clock. He remembered it was broken.
I am worried. What if something terrible happened to him? What if he's fallen into a deep hole? What if he's lost in the woods? What if he's cold and wet and hungry? What if he's being chased by a big animal with many sharp teeth? What if he's being eaten up? I will pull Frog out that hole. I will show Frog the way. I will hit that big animal and all of his teeth will come flying out. Do not worry. Frog, I am coming out.
Hello, Toad. I am very sorry to be late. I was wrapping your present.
You're not at the bottom of a deep hole.
No.
You're not lost in the woods.
No.
You're not being chased by a big animal and being eaten up.
No, not at all.
I am glad to spend Merry Christmas with you. It's beautiful.
two friends sat by the fire. The hands of the clock moved to show the hours of a Merry Christmas Eve.
Cookies.
Toad ran to Frog's house.
Frog, take these cookies that I have made.
Frog ate one of the cookies.
These are the best cookies I have ever eaten.
Frog and Toad ate many cookies, one after another.
You know, Toad, I think we should stop eating. We will soon be shook.
You are right. Let us eat one last cookie and then we will stop.
Frog and Toad ate one last cookie. There were many cookies left in the bowl.
Frog, let us eat one very last cookie and then we will stop.
Frog and Toad ate one very last cookie.
We must stop eating.
Yes, we need willpower.
What is willpower?
Willpower is trying hard not to do something that you really want to do.
You mean like trying hard not to eat all these cookies?
Right.
Frog put the cookies in a box.
There. Now we'll not eat any more cookies.
But we could open the box.
That is true.
Frog tied some string around the box.
There. Now we're not eating more cookies.
But we could cut the string and open the box.
That is true.
Frog got a ladder. He put the box up on a high shelf.
There. Now we'll not eat any more cookies.
But we could climb the ladder and take the box down to the shelf and cut the string and open the box.
That is true.
Frog took the box down from the shelf, cut the string, and opened the box, and took the box outside and shouted in a loud voice,
Hey, birds! Here are cookies! Hey, birds! There are cookies!
Birds came from everywhere. They picked up all the cookies in their beaks and flew away.
Now we have 9 more cookies. Not even one.
Yes, but now we have lots and lots of willpower.
You may keep it all, Frog. I'm going home to bake a cake.
Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
In the early 1800s, settlers began moving to the western part of the United States. Most of them did not cross the Mississippi River. France owned a large portion of land in North America called the Louisiana Territory. The leader of France was Napoleon Bonaparte. France was at war with Great Britain and he needed money to fight the war. During that time, Thomas Jefferson was the third president of the United States. President Jefferson wanted to expand the size of the United States. Napoleon decided to sell the Louisiana Territory to the United States for $15 million. With this deal, the size of the United States doubled. Americans had no idea what was west of the Mississippi River. No American explorer had ever traveled through that territory. Jefferson was able to get Congress to approve funding for an expedition now that it was part of the United States.
My name is William Clark, Second Lieutenant William Clark. I am going to tell you about a trip that I took with my good friend Meriwether Lewis. He led the expedition and he chose me to help him. Our group was called the Corps of Discovery. Together we led a group of men all the way across the country to the Pacific Ocean. We had a group of 44 men, mostly soldiers, but there were men who were hired to do particular things. And I took along my slave, York, who has been with me since I was a child. Lewis bought a dog for $20 to take on the trip, a black Newfoundland named Seaman. He was a hunter and helped to protect our group. Even though this was an exciting adventure and we would discover many new and exciting things, President Jefferson gave us some objectives for our trip. We were to explore and map the Louisiana Territory and find a river that crossed the western half of the continent, and we were to make a report of the plants and animals we found, and we were to trade with the Indians. There were a lot of supplies that we had to take along. We bought several boats, including a keel boat that let us sail against the current. We left from Camp Wood, Missouri on May 14,1804 and traveled upstream from St. Louis. We hoped that this river would lead us all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Lewis took care of collecting and reporting all the plants and animals. I drew the maps of the land as we traveled through. We kept journals for our trip and drew pictures of the plants and animals that we could not collect. We also named different landmarks that we saw. We traveled the river and went ashore to hunt for meat and make camp for the night. There were many animals to hunt. The rolling treeless plains spreading as far as your eye could see were amazing to see. Here were the massive herds of buffalo spreading over the prairie. We met Native Americans along the way, some friendly and some not. We held council with them, telling them that their land was now owned by the United States government and that we would protect them. We traded things with them and gave them gifts. We presented every chief with a coin engraved with the image of President Jefferson on one side and on the other side a handshake meaning peace and friendship. While traveling through the plains, we discovered many plants that we did not know about. We gave names to these plants and animals. Prairie dogs were named dogs because they have a barking noise. The grizzly bear is one animal that we came across that is fierce and is to be feared. If they are wounded or angry, they will attack you, and it is hard to kill them. At first we were not afraid, but when a wounded bear chased us, we learned to be careful of them. Our Corps of Discovery met the Mandan Native American tribe. We built a fort and named it Fort Mandan, where we will stay for the winter. The winter here was cold. The temperatures were 45 degrees below zero. During the winter, we packed up all that we had collected and sent them back to President Jefferson in the spring.
My name is Sagar Kawea. I am a Native American from the Shoshone tribe who live near the Rocky Mountains. When I was just a girl, another tribe, the Hidatsus, attacked my people during a buffalo hunt. They kidnapped me along with many other children. I believe that all of my family were killed. The Hidatsus took us to the Mandan village. There, I learned how the Hidatsus lived, but I never forgot my family or my homeland. When I grew older, I became the second wife of a French-Canadian trapper and trader, Toussaint Charbonneau. One day, I met the Corps of Discovery. They were the first white men I have ever seen. The group of men want to travel across the land and get to what they call the Pacific Ocean. I have never seen the ocean, but it sounds like it is beautiful. Lewis and Clark are the leaders of this group. The Corps hired Charbonneau as an interpreter. They wanted me to come along and be their Shoshone interpreter, because they thought that if they could find my people, they could get horses from them for their journey through the mountains. During the winter, my baby boy was born, who was named Jean-Baptiste, but I would call my baby Paul. I will carry him on my back for the journey. In the spring, 12 of the men of the Corps returned home in their killboats with the plants they had collected, reports, maps, and a few live animals to show their President Jefferson. We traveled up the river that they call the Missouri River. I know what is good to eat in the woods, so I help by finding plants, roots, and berries to eat. One time when we were traveling, a storm came up and the boat I was in nearly turned completely over and our supplies began to float down the river. I was able to rescue some of Lewis and Clark's supplies. One time I became very sick and almost died. When we came to a fork in the river, they did not know which was the right river. Getting the wrong one would be the end of their expedition. The Hidatsus said that there would be a great waterfall in the river, so we split up into two groups to find this waterfall. Lewis' group found the waterfall and we continued, but there were delays we did not expect. The many waterfalls along the river made a problem. The men had to build carts to push our supplies over rough terrain to get around them. The prickly pear cactus cut our moccasins and made our feet terribly sore. I started to recognize places, so I thought that my people were close by. Lewis and a scouting party then went to try to find my people. On the scouting trip, Lewis found the Continental Divide and made the disappointing discovery that there is no river going through the mountains. Ahead were stretching immense snow-capped mountains. Lewis finally found my people. Lewis and Clark brought me to translate for them. I was astonished to recognize the chief. He's my brother, Kamali. Sadly, he told me that we are the only ones left in our family, but we would get the horses that we needed. We stayed 2 weeks with my people to rest before going on. Then the explorers were ready to cross the Bitterroot Mountains, where they hoped to find a river that would go through the mountains. I decided to go along. I wanted to see the ocean. A Shoshone guide showed us the way over the mountains. The mountains were bigger than the explorers had expected. It was difficult. Snow and ice made traveling even more dangerous. Even the guide lost his way on the trail. We were cold and close to starving. We finally found our way out of the mountains, and a Nez Perce tribe helped us. We dug up canoes to travel another river, the Columbia River. Natives gathered to watch us drown because the rapids around this river were so dangerous, but we made it through safely. We reached the Pacific Ocean in November 1805. Ocean view! Oh, the joy! We were all very excited. The men built a fort near Fort Clatsop, where we spent the winter. The winter was so stormy and wet, our clothes rotted, so we had to make new clothes. Some of the men began to make salt to cure meat. They collected water from the ocean and cooked it down. One day, we heard that a whale had washed up on the beach. I'm not sure which is more beautiful, the ocean or the whale.
On March 23, 1805, the explorers began their journey back home. When they reached the Mandan village, Charbonneau and Sacagawea stayed at the village, and the Corps returned home. The Corps of Discovery returned home with maps of the land and rivers and mountains, journals filled with information about native peoples, plants, and animals, and stories about what happened on their journey. The American people began to dream about traveling further west. The journey of the Corps of Discovery began the westward expansion. The maps that Lewis and Clark made helped the people on their journeys west.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed thy presence, my light. Be thou my wisdom, and thou my true word. I ever with thee, thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and guide thy true Son, indwelling and with thee one. Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance, now and always. Thou and thou first in thy heart, High King of heaven, my treasure thou art. High King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joyful bright and sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision. O ruler
Well, good evening. Literature has always been one of my passions, a great interest of mine. And this year I got to teach all 4 classes of literature. And we finished the books. Anybody who's been a former student or teacher knows that that's a really big accomplishment for us to finish our literature story or literature textbook. So they're going to share some of what they learned with you tonight.
There are several important parts of every story. The first thing we'll look at is the setting. It is like the stage where a story takes place. The setting is the place and time of a story, and the time and the place that a story takes place. The place could be an actual or realistic location, a fantastical imaginary kingdom, even a spaceship or a distant planet. We can find ourselves in the present time, in the distant time, or time traveling to the future. Writers do careful research to make sure these settings are as realistic and believable as possible. Sometimes the setting is a symbol for important ideas within a story. The setting of the story often creates its mood. The mood of the story is a certain emotion the author wants the reader to feel. You can probably guess the mood of a story with the settings you can see in these pictures. The mood of this urban setting could be called bustling, friendly, or lively. This one is very different. It is lonely and isolated. This room is a cozy and homelike. It feels like a safe place. This garden creates a calm, cheerful, and relaxing mood. Authors can also set the mood by using descriptive words. Characters and their personalities can also affect the mood of the story. The mood will also be created or even changed by the story's events. It can change as the story develops. I'm going to use the Bible story of Esther to illustrate the different parts of a story. The setting of Esther is in a country called Persia, in the city of Shushan, in a palace. Once we've identified the setting, another main thing to notice is the point of view. Point of view is the perspective from which the story is told. Ask yourself, who is telling the story? Is it told by someone inside the story, using the pronouns thou and me? If it is, the point of view is called first person. This point of view feels more personal because we can see and think exactly what the character is seeing and thinking. Sometimes the author wants to tell the story from an outsider's perspective or even from several characters' perspectives. When the author does this, he is using third person point of view. He is telling the story from a distance. This perspective uses the pronouns he, him, she, her, they, and them. There are two kinds of third person. Limited and omniscient. Limited third person follows only one's character's thoughts and feelings. Omniscient includes several characters' thoughts and emotions. Each point of view gives us a different idea and feel. Authors choose the one that best helps the reader see and feel what they want them to. The story of Esther is told in third person omniscient. We can see the actions of several characters at once. We know what Esther and Mordecai are doing and saying, but we can also see in Haman's thoughts and actions. Once the stage has been set, we move through the story's events. All the events from the beginning to the end are called the plot. The plot usually follows a pattern known as the plot mountain. At the bottom of the mountain, we find the inciting incident. For the story of Esther, the inciting incident is when she is chosen as the queen of Persia. Things get more exciting and the tension builds as we climb the rising action. The action in Esther rises when Mordecai saves the king's life by telling him about the plot to assassinate him. The next big event is when Haman convinces the king to kill all the Jews. Esther has to go before the king to plead for her people's lives. This is terrifying to her because no one is allowed before the king unless he personally invites them. The action climbs closer to its highest point as Esther goes to the king and he holds out his scepter. The author can use several tools to make the rising action more suspenseful. Suspense is the excited or anxious feeling created when an author keeps back information. He raises questions in our minds so that we will keep reading. The reader can't wait to find out how it ends. Foreshadowing is a way to increase suspense. The author provides clues or hints to prepare the reader for what will happen later in the story. But foreshadowing should not give away the ending. In the story of Esther, we can see foreshadowing taking place when Haman needs to honor Mordecai and Haman's wife tells him that things will not work out for him if he tries to harm Mordecai. The suspense builds when Esther invites the king and Haman to several banquets before she finally reveals what she wants. At the highest point of the plot, we find the climax. This is the moment of greatest excitement or emotion, the turning point. The climax in Esther is when Esther tells the king about Haman's evil plan to kill the Jews. Then we climb back down this falling action as we finish solving all the problems and answering all the questions. Falling action in Esther happens when the king orders Haman to be hanged. The Jews are allowed to fight back and Esther's people are saved. We find the resolution at the bottom, where everyone lives happy after, such as Mordecai and Esther are not like Haman. All of that exciting plot would not happen without conflict. Conflict is a struggle between two opposing forces in a story. Good conflict makes the reader keep reading to see how the struggle ends. We can divide conflicts into several categories. Man versus man is when our hero has to deal with problems created by another character. Haman and Mordecai experience man versus man in their hatred for each other. A second category of conflicts happens in man versus self. Our character is struggling with different emotions and thoughts. Esther deals with man versus self as she prays before going to the king. Another category is man versus a greater force. This force could be nature, changes that machines and technology bring out, or perhaps attitudes of society like racism for time. One kind of conflict, such as man versus time, might cause man versus self to happen. A conflict can change throughout the story as the plot moves along. If an author puts all the parts together skillfully, a well-told story will be waiting for every reader.
No story can happen without characters. Characters are the people or animals in a story, or to put it simply, who the story is about. They have personality traits that affect their behavior. These traits are revealed by dialogue, thoughts, or actions. We can classify characters in several ways. One of the first things you will look for is the story's main character, or central character. The other people are the supporting characters. They add to the plot even though the story is about the main character, not them. Most of the time, they are different from the main character, or even the opposite. When a supporting character does this, we call them a foil character. The interaction of the supporting characters with the main character helps bring out the traits of the main character that the author wants you to know are important. For example, the example I'm using is the story of Joseph from Genesis. Obviously, the main character is Joseph. The supporting characters are his family, with his father and his brothers, Potiphar and his wife, the baker and the butler he meets in prison, and Pharaoh. To understand our character, let's take a look at character traits. This is a description of what a person or animal is like. For example, you could describe someone as kind, cruel, diligent, lazy, confident, uncertain, humble, or arrogant. Characters think and act in ways that match their traits. We can learn what the traits of a character are by the responses. For example, Joseph shows that he is responsible when he is the steward of Potiphar's house, and later when he is in charge of the prison. His character and love for God are unyielding. Joseph shows that he is wise in interpreting dreams and giving good advice, and diligent in gathering food before the famine. He is fair when he does not kill his brothers right away to get revenge, but waits to see if they have changed for the good and forgives them. Joseph is meek. He had the power to do whatever he wanted to the people that had treated him horribly. He instead used his power to save thousands of people's lives from the famine. Character traits have a significant influence on the plot. When characters with very different traits respond differently to situations, it creates conflict. The traits of characters will guide their decisions and choices, therefore affecting what happens next in the story. Another thing to pay attention to in a character is their motivations. Of course, the person's traits will play a role in motivating them to act in a certain way, but other factors have a part too. For example, the character's motivations may also be influenced by their family background or something that happened before the story begins, maybe childhood experiences or a life-changing event. It is often revealed by what the character says and does, or perhaps a flashback to an earlier time. To find what motivates a character, look for what is important to them. A well-written character's motivations will be consistent with their traits. Great full characters go through some kind of development. What is character development? It's when a character undergoes change for the better or worse. This can be because of events that happen to the character, because of an influence of another character, or because they gain an understanding of something new. We can trace how a character changes in a story, for good or bad, by asking a few questions as we read. What is the character like at the beginning? What key events happen to the character, and how do they respond? How has the character changed from the beginning of the story? In written stories, character changes that in real life would take several years can be just read in a few minutes. Not every character goes through a change. Often, only the main characters go through major character development. Supporting characters may influence or help the change. We use this difference to divide them into developing and static characters. Static characters' traits remain the same throughout the story. This is not always a bad thing. Mentors and teachers can be a major influence on our hero and give stability to stories. Our main character, Joseph, is an excellent example of a static character. His trait is consistent from beginning to end. His brothers, however, are developing characters. Developing characters change throughout the story. At the beginning of the story, they're cruel, jealous, and greedy, but at the end, they're unselfish and humble. They have a lot of character development. This often illustrates the whole point of the story. This is the theme or the author's message in a story. When we find the theme, we will know what the story really means. Some themes are stated outright, like the moral at the end of a fable. Others require more careful thinking. Sometimes you will need to look for symbolism to reveal the deeper meaning of the story. Symbolism is when something represents something else. An idea, like peace, is often represented by a dove. A red rose is a common symbol of the motion of love. Sometimes symbols change their meaning throughout the story, or mean different things to different people. Symbols spark the reader's imagination and make the theme more memorable. All of a story's basic elements, setting, plot, and characters, work to communicate the theme. Sometimes the setting of a scene in a story can symbolize a struggle or a change a character is facing. The events of the plot often show the consequences of actions or choices. Characters respond in admirable or shameful ways to their circumstances. The author uses these to emphasize their point. Perhaps they want to encourage right choices and ward against evil ones, or point out a problem they notice. Well-written stories often have layers of meaning so that readers have something new and interesting to think about every time they return to it.
Time out of mind, we told each other stories to create shared experiences and strengthen our communities. One character archetype stands out from the rest in preserving and reinforcing our cultural values and identity, the hero. We can learn much about a culture by listening for who that culture deems worthy to be an outstanding role model and representative of its values. Anthropologists, scholars of humans and their societies, began to notice that heroes from around the world shared some patterns in their adventures. The various people noticed this hero myth pattern through the later 1800s and early 1900s. In 1949, literature professor Joseph Campbell wrote the most famous book on the subject, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He popularized the idea of the monomyth or hero's journey. Through the decades since, other scholars have refined and built on his ideas. The general idea remains roughly the same. A hero steps out of his comfort zone into an adventure. He takes on a dangerous quest that will cost him deeply. The experience will transform him, and he returns home to bring stability or a better life to those depending on him. This simple template can be broken down further. We meet our hero in ordinary life, going about his ordinary business. But then some event, possibly a threat or a danger, calls them to leave their familiar life to face the problem. Sometimes the hero steps up willingly. Sometimes they try to avoid the responsibility, but eventually they accept the call to adventure. They don't set off blindly, though. Most heroes meet a mentor or guide figure with special wisdom or powers who gives them something they need to succeed. It could be a special object, training, perhaps simply good advice, or a blessing. Now it's time for them to take the plunge and step into an environment different than they've ever experienced. They need to adapt to this world of constant danger. Sometimes this includes supernatural events or fantastical creatures. They will walk a road of trial that will make them stronger and wiser for the ultimate ordeal ahead. They will meet with both friends who become companions on the quest or enemies who try to stop them. As they approach the final test, often they are confronted with something that motivates or prepares them for what lies ahead. Eventually, the moment of crisis comes when they face the worst yet. At this lowest point, they usually lose something very dear to them. Sometimes a valuable object or their mentor figure dies. Sometimes they lose the battle or even their own life, but it's not the end. They succeed in their mission and are transformed. For braving the abyss, they earn a reward such as treasure, love, or respect. With a new strength and understanding, they are ready to return home. They still face some last obstacles that put their newfound knowledge of strength to the test, but they aren't the same person anymore and prove themselves worthy of the hero title. A hero comes back to save their world and restore order to it, and they find their place again in the new and improved ordinary life. Let's see how the story of David matches the hero's journey. He starts out as a common shepherd. Then along comes Samuel, who anoints him as the future king of Israel. He officially steps into the world of the hero with the defeat of Goliath. He leaves home to live in the palace. While Jonathan is his friend, King Saul gets jealous, and a few years later he is on the run for his life. David's psalm gives us an idea of the depths he felt during this time. He lived in caves. At one point, he needed to feign insanity. He fought many battles with the enemies of Israel, but in the end, he had grown to be a man after God's heart, ready to take on the responsibility of being crowned king. What kind of character did it take to go on this life-changing journey? In our study of British literature this year, we followed several heroes on their quest and took note of what traits made them worthy of the role. We began with tales in Old English. When the Germanic Anglo-Saxons invaded England, they brought along a heroic ideal typified by a warrior king. The four heroic virtues absorbed into the English concept of the hero. This brave leader needed to face his foes with immense, nearly superhuman strength and unflinching courage to meet the ideal of fortitude. But no one wants their fearless leader to recklessly start unnecessary conflicts at the risk of destabilizing the community. He must have enough prudence or practical wisdom not to rush unprepared into battle. A great hero was also fiercely loyal and generous to his people. The Anglo-Saxon concept of comitatus required leaders to offer generous gifts and friendship to their followers in return for the followers' loyalty and support in battle. As the church became an established culture-setting influence in England, the ideal of the hero shifted. The knight's code of chivalry defined the medieval hero. The knight courtier should still be brave in battle, but must also be a shining example of piety and peace as well. He fought for God and the church, and his loyalty was to the king, to God, and to his lady. His generosity extended to his enemies in showing mercy and refusing an unfair fight. The heroic idea changed with each era of change in thought and value. The Renaissance valued the well-rounded scholar. The Reformation created many religious martyrs. The Romantics conceptualized the Byronic hero, a misunderstood rebel with good intentions deep down. How about now? Strength, courage, benevolence, and loyalty to comrade and country still form part of the heroic ideal. Popular culture still admires immense physical strength in its superheroes. We admire literary heroes that show prudence and fortitude, but war heroes are no longer considered the ultimate. Scientists who discover life-changing cures, inventors who radically change technology, people who run outstanding charities, and leaders who steer their countries through crisis or conflict are just as likely to earn the title. Today, the ranks of heroes are usually filled by ordinary people who accomplish the extraordinary. As modernism and later postmodernism grew in popularity, the belief in the hero has been challenged. To hold the view that there is no absolute truth, that truth is relative for each person, is to reject the idea that there is a standard to be admired and aimed for. Idealism is seen as unrealistic and outdated. Instead, the anti-hero, flawed, a victim of society and isolation, motivated by selfishness, often on a mission of justice by revenge, is considered realistic and even admirable. What do you think? Are there such things as heroes? Who do you see as your role model? What qualities inspire the Christian hero? Are you a hero?
We've heard about the building blocks of stories and the heroes you can meet within them, but in the event that some of you are still wondering, why bother, I'd like to make one last argument for reading broadly and point out some ways to approach reading critically. The many important stories of great heroes and foundational themes can, and have been passed down in the oral tradition, written literature allows for direct, clear communication across great distances. We can hear the voices of people divided from us geographically and across time. And God revealed himself to us through language and literature in the form of the Bible. This merits skill in reading and interpreting literature. Stories are about communication. God seems to have built into us a desire to share our experiences and thoughts with those around us, some more than others. But it's actually rather hard to express our complicated and nuanced emotions to someone else. We use figurative language such as hyperbole, metaphor to try to help. We may say we are bursting with joy or that our hearts are broken, but these rather non-compelling and cliche expressions probably won't have the dramatic effect that we wish they would. Reading broadly and deeply can give us the language to communicate our experiences better. Reading attentively will give you a deep understanding of language, therefore equipping you with the linguistic tools to share your own story with more precision. We're better able to explain our joy and our heartbreak. We are ready to communicate our vision for important projects, whether in business or in the kingdom of God. Reading is an act of empathy, an imagining of what it would be like to be someone else. Reading thoughtfully connects us to each other. We recognize our own desires and emotions within the characters of the story. We all know what it's like to experience wonder, ambition, longing, love, grief, etc. As we experience these through another's eyes, we learn more about those around us, those who came before us, and therefore more about ourselves. We gain a fuller understanding of lives other than our own, which will help us be more empathetic, which will help us navigate complex human relationships more skillfully. Read to be moved, to go to places and glimpse worlds you otherwise wouldn't or couldn't see, and often this leads us to explore otherwise hidden worlds within ourselves. Read critically. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I don't mean read to find fault, to find everything wrong with the story. There can be plenty to find wrong with every story written or told ever, with the exception of God's story. But reading only to find what is wrong is often not the most helpful. To read critically is to look closely at a text and pay attention to the subtle ways the author is trying to communicate the full complexity of the human experience. Ask, what about this experience is valuable and worthy of attention? What stories have expanded my universe or changed the way I think? Reading critically has, at times, by well-meaning teachers, been mistaken for finding one particular meaning for a work and insisting on it as final, or sometimes it's trying to decide what the author actually meant and closing all further doors in discussion. While thorough intent can definitely be a great way to get started on understanding work, it's a bit narrow to stop there. Reading can be viewed as a conversation between an author and a reader. Therefore, the author does not need to mean something to be symbolic for it to be validly interpreted as one. The reader may very well find a bigger, richer interpretation of the work than the author originally intended. This is not the argument for the death of the author, as the postmodernists would say. It is an argument for allowing space for dialogue and building on each other's ideas just as in any other conversation. Literary criticism can be defined as the practice of establishing criteria for and engaging in analysis, interpretation, and evaluation of works of literature. A good book will bring attention to important ideas and give us a framework through which to think about them. The best literature will illustrate the truth. It will demonstrate goodness. Consequences will be for actions. The bad will meet justice, the good rewarded. It will reflect the beauty our creator has worked into creation. Sir Philip Sidney said in his Apology for Poetry, he says this about value of reading a story. For these right poets, be they which most properly imitate, to teach and delight, for indeed they delight to move men to take that goodness in hand, without which they would fly as from a stranger, and teach to make them know that goodness whereunto they are moved, the end of all earthly learning being virtuous action. For the philosopher, setting down with thorny arguments the bare rule, is so hard of utterance and so misty to be conceived, that one that hath no other guide but him shall wait in him till he be old, before he shall find sufficient cause to be honest. George MacDonald said, the best thing you can do for your fellow, next to rousing his conscience, is not to give him things to think about, but to wake things up that are in him, or say, to make him think things for himself. Good art is one of God's channels. Among the arts, literature is able to bring together beauty and thought. It has transformative qualities through the spirit. The seeds planted deep in our imagination sprout, grow, and bear fruit over time, perhaps even years later. A transformed imagination will be ready to look creatively for healing in the broken world around them. Okay, class, you have all read The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and now you're going to write a book report on it. It needs to have a minimum of 100 words, and it is due on Wednesday.
Homework.
Homework, homework, homework.
Yuck. A book report on Peter Rabbit.
Peter Rabbit, Peter Rabbit.
Peter Rabbit is a stupid book about the stupid rabbit. He's the vegetable in other people's gardens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 83 to go.
The name of the book about which this book report is about is Peter Rabbit, which is about this rabbit. I found it I like the part where it reminded me of Robin Hood and the part when Giraffe saw Sheriff nodding his back, and the robin and everyone sprung from the trees in a sudden surprise attack, and they captured the sheriff and all of his goods, and they carried him back to the camp in the woods, and the sheriff was got their dinner all, but he wiggled away and he sounded the call, the men rushed in, the arrows flew. Peter Rabbit did sort of that kind of thing too.
The other people's name was McGregor. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
In examining a book such as Peter Rabbit, it is important that the superficial characteristics of its deceptively simple plot should not be allowed to blind the reader to the more substantial fabric of its deeper motivations. In this report, I plan to discuss the sociological implications of family pressures so great as to drive an otherwise moral rabbit to perform acts of thievery which he consciously knew were against the law. I also hope to explore the personality of Mr. McGregor and his conflicting roles as farmer and humanitarian. Peter Rabbit is established from the start as a benevolent hero, and it is only...
If I start writing now when I'm not really rested, it could upset my thinking, which is no good at all. I'll get a fresh start tomorrow, and it's not due to Wednesday, so I'll have all of Tuesday unless something should happen. Why does this always happen? I should be outside playing, getting fresh air and sunshine. I work best under pressure. There'll be lots of pressure if I wait till tomorrow. I should start writing now. But if I start writing now when I'm not really rested, it could upset my thinking, which is no good at all.
The name of the rabbit was Peter. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Yes!
Down came the staff on his head, smash! And Robin fell like a sack full of lead, crash! The sheriff laughed and he left him for dead. Ah, but he was wrong.
35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40.
Just then and there with the wind, wing! It was a sign for the fight to begin, zing! And it looked like the sheriff would win. Ah, but not for long. Away they ran, just like rabbits, who run a lot, as you can tell from the story of Peter Rabbit, which this report is about.
How do they expect us to write a book report of any quality in just 2 days?
There were vegetables in the garden.
How can they conspire to make life so miserable and so effectively in so many ways?
And parsnips, tomatoes, potatoes, asparagus, cauliflower, rhubarb, and chives.
Not to mention the extreme pressure exerted on him by his deeply rooted rivalry with Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail.
If I start
Peter
writing now,
Rabbit is a stupid book about the stupid rabbit. He's just messed up with other people's garden.
Family pressure.
Peter Rabbit. 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82. And they were very, 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 very happy to be home. And 94, 95. The very, 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 very end.
A book report on Peter Rabbit.
Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same?
Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known?
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. When the saints go marching in, when the saints go marching in, I wanna be in that number. When the saints go marching in, I wanna sing, sing, sing. I wanna dance, dance, dance. I wanna sing, I wanna dance. Hallelujah. When the gates are open wide, I'll be standing by your side. I wanna sing, I wanna dance. Hallelujah. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I wanna sing, 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 sweet chariot, I wanna sing, I wanna dance, hallelujah. When the gates are open wide, I'll be standing by your side. I wanna sing, I wanna dance, hallelujah.
Thank you very much. That's a wrap. Please give them a hand. I enjoyed that very much, and hopefully our audience did too. Thank you for all your hard work, and now you've got a couple more days of school, and it's summertime, so you can leave this all behind you, all that hard work getting ready. One more thing, there were some major milestones in our school. We had 7 first graders who started their first year of formal schooling, but Miss Tiffany Strite has completed 12 grades of schooling, and so she will be transitioning to a new era of life. So I'm going to present this diploma of graduation to her, and please show your appreciation for Tiffany. Congratulations, Tiffany.